Hello everyone, welcome back, and today I'm not going over any specific deck, but rather I wanted to give some tips and tricks to some newer players on how to build your first Commander deck. Really starting off Commander, just like any hobby, can be really daunting. There's a lot of little nuances that go with Commander, so I wanted to make a video that might just help explain some of these easier tips and tricks that might make the deck building process a little bit easier. So, channel deck stuff, get the cards you need from link down below, like, comment, subscribe, whatever, right? Whatever. Let's talk about Commander in a nutshell, and we're going to be using Ayara first with Lockwing. Commander is a 100 card singleton format, so the way your deck is structured is you have 99 cards in a pile, which is your real deck, and then the 100th card is off to the side in your command zone. Your commander is going to be one legendary creature that you choose. There are some scenarios where it can be a planeswalker, however, it has to say it can be your commander, but for simplicity's sake, let's just focus simply on creature commanders. Now, the command zone also exists unique to this format. The command zone is where your commander lives. It's where you can cast it from. Essentially, imagine it as an extra spot in your hand, really. So the unique thing about the command zone, right, is whenever your commander goes anywhere, right, you can choose to move to the command zone instead. So if someone destroys your commander, if they exile it, if they bounce it, if they shuffle into your deck, whatever, right? If it leaves your field, it goes to a different zone, you can choose to put it back in your command zone. But when you do, it makes your commander cost 2 more mana to cast, 2 more generic mana. So Ayara cost black, black, black. But let's say someone destroys target Ayara, right? And now we choose to move her back to the command zone. When we recast her, instead of costing black, 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 she'll cost 2 generic mana, black, 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 for a total of 5 mana. It is also a multiplayer format with 40 life each. Commander damage is another unique mechanic just for Commander. If your commander does combat damage to a player over the course of the game that exceeds 21 total damage, that player is dead. I'm talking like it doesn't have to be 21 damage in one swing. It could be, let's say we attack 11 times with Ayara and dealing 22 damage, right? That'll still work. So it doesn't have to be necessarily in one turn, but that will kill one player. And then another unique thing is you can only use cards of your colors, your commander's color identity. So since Ayara is a mono black commander, we can only use colorless cards and mono black cards. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's talk about how to get your first deck. There's a couple of ways you can do it, right? First things first, and the one I would really recommend is I would buy a precon. They're straight to go right away, fresh out the box. They're usually pretty good, and they're all pretty tailored to the general theme of what you want to do. It is probably the easiest, and I'd say most cost-effective, well, one of the most cost-effective ways of doing it. You can also build a deck list online. You can check websites, Moxfield, websites like Moxfield and EDH are tapped out. And it just so happens I know a reliable YouTuber that makes magic content, hint, hint. Whatever, not really. Kind of. Anyways, you could also build your own cards, build your own deck with cards that you have. So you don't have to like break the bank. Like if you're interested in like trying out like a 100 card deck, like you could find a cool legendary creature you have in your collection and just see if you can throw together a pile and just start going through that and having some nice easy casual fun. Now let's talk about how Commander is different from other formats. Commander is multiplayer, and unlike other Magic formats, that means a lot of different things. It means you play politics, it is longer games, and that there are more threats. What I mean by politics is in a normal game of Magic, if you're playing standard or modern or whatever, right, you only have one opponent. If your opponent told you not to attack them, why would you listen? Now, Commander is a little bit different because you can form allies in like a weird way. If I'm like, hey, player A, I won't attack you if you don't attack me, and maybe we can gang up on player B, right? But then might make player B go, hey, player C, they're forming an alliance, let's also kind of gang up. So there's like different political pieces of like, hey, if you let me like attack you for a little bit, I won't attack you next turn. You can make promises like that. The longer games are exactly what they are. I mean, you're dealing with now 4 different people. So it can be kind of tricky to have to eliminate 4, or 3 other players. And there's also a lot more threats. There's a lot more things to keep track of, right? Because in normal, standard, modern, whatever, you're just focused on your opponent's board state. Now you have 3 opponents because it's usually played in games of 4. You now have 3 opponents. So tricky. Commander damage is, like I said earlier, a very viable way to win the game, and it's one of the bigger things. Now, I do need to mention that commander damage is 21 combat damage. If you read Ayara, right? Ayara says whenever her or another black creature enters, each opponent loses 1 life. That's not damage. But let's say hypothetically we play a spell that says Ayara target creature deals 5 damage to any target, right? If we had Ayara deal 5 damage to an opponent, that will not count because that is not combat damage. And again, like I said earlier, we have to operate in the scope of our color identity. So for Ayara, for example, we can only play black cards and only play colorless cards. So we can't add even like hybrid mana stuff. Like, let's say, for example, Deathrite Shaman is a good example of this. He's black and green, right? But because he has that green and we have a mono black commander, despite being hybrid mana, we can't play it. Although it is black, it is also green, therefore green is not in our color identity, as Ayara is not green, we cannot play it. So, the big topic, how do I pick a commander? There are so many options, and honestly guys, there are too many options. I started playing Commander back in like 2014 or so like very briefly after Commander started. I started playing way back then, and with every set we're getting more and more legendary creatures, and with every set we're getting special Commander decks that even bring more and more stuff in. It's overwhelming, there's too much stuff. But ultimately, we can break it down into 3 different kinds of commanders. I look at commanders as tribal commanders, mechanical commanders, and value commanders, and I'm going to get into them right now. Tribal commanders focus primarily on one creature type. Let's look at the Ur-Dragon, for example. Eminence says as long as he's in the command zone of the battlefield, other dragons cost 1 less to cast. Whenever 1 or more dragons you control attack, draw that many cards, and then you can play a permanent for free. I made a deck tech for it. Check it out if you want. If not, it doesn't matter, right? The focus of it is that this commander cares specifically about dragons. We're not putting like humans in this deck unless they're all for synergy with dragons, but you guys know what I mean. Like, the deck is mostly going to be playing big dragons and cards that care about specific creature types, that care about playing dragons. So let's say there's a lot of examples of cards that are just like, choose a creature type, creatures of the chosen type get +1/+1. Cool, we'll say dragons. Now all our dragons get +1/+1. The cool thing about tribal decks is the deck building is a little bit easier because you're not limited, but you're looking more strictly at, like, just, in this example, just dragons. Like, if we're building a dragon deck, we're not going to put any fungus in dragons because it would be no point. And tribal decks generally win with battle cruiser strategies. And what battle cruiser means is really just, it's my turn, I'm going to attack opponent, and like, it's not necessarily aggro, but like, I'm just going to primarily win the game through combat damage. No shenanigans, no nonsense. I'm going to build up a big board state, and I'm going to win through combat damage. Going into mechanical, that focuses more on a specific way to win. So we're talking like we win by equipment or life gain or 1/1 counters or whatever deck style you want. So let's look at Captain America, right? He has the throw ability to unattach an equipment from him to deal damage equal to that equipment's mana value divided among 1, 2, or 3 targets. And then at the beginning of our turn or combat, we can attach an equipment for free. So in a Captain America commander deck, you would really focus more on just playing equipment, right? Like, you're going to mostly win through a lot of cards that support equipment, good creatures to put equipment on, cost reducers for that equipment. I made a deck tech for him too in another video. Check it out if you want. If not, he's just a good example, right? So we're going to win through synergies to make, like, his example. We would win through synergies to make our equipment cost less, equip for free, or whatever. He's a great commander because he's removal on commander, whatever, right? The idea is this is how mechanical commanders win. They have the most options. There are way more ways to win Magic than there are at least creature types. And the final one let's talk about is a value commander, right? Now, a value commander does not really impact the game as aggressively as the other commanders would, but it really just offers more quality of life effects. And an excellent example of this is Muldrotha, because Muldrotha just says, during each of our turns, you may play a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from our graveyard. So really, Muldrotha's not doing, like, it's not like the Ur-Dragon that's being a cost reducer. It's not like Captain America who equips himself for free and then attacks and destroys our opponent's creatures by unattaching. Muldrotha is just more like, this is good value. You can play cards from your graveyard too, right? Just like you play cards from your hand, you can play cards from your graveyard. So value commanders, they generally focus on a theme. Like Muldrotha, obviously you would probably do a lot of self-milling, putting a lot of cards from your deck in your graveyard so you basically have more options. It can still be tribal, but generally it's going on theme, and also like it's just good utility, right? Value commanders, they just help the deck stay very consistent and they give a lot of options. So some value commanders will make a lot of mana, some value commanders will just like kind of keep the board cleared or whatever, right? Muldrotha is a great example because it gives us more card advantage because we can play them from our grave. So you chose your commander, now what do you want to do, right? It's time to take a look at some of the individual cards you want to add, and when you add those cards, let's think, does this card help my strategy to win the game, and does this card interact with my commander, right? So let's talk about Ayara from before. Ayara says whenever another creature enters, or another black creature enters, each opponent loses 1 life and gains 1 life. We can look at the obvious stuff of, if a card says dragons get +2/+2, we're probably not going to run it, right? It simply wouldn't make any sense. So we can start eliminating a lot of stuff like that, or maybe we can look at some other stuff. Let's say there's a creature that says, let's say it's a zombie, and it says when it enters, it brings 2 other zombies with it. So we can think, this creature enters, and it's going to drain each opponent for 3 life, and we're going to gain 3 life. That kind of works with Ayara, and I think it's a good idea, right? So those are the kind of cards we want to take a little cut. And I also want to mention, you want to avoid adding cards simply because they're powerful. There are staples, and that's kind of like a different thing, but adding like a few of them is not bad, but your overall synergy is going to be way more better and way more consistent rather than just having like one big effect, right? Not saying that these big effects are bad, but you don't want to have a ton of them just kind of for the sake of it, just for the sake of them being good. Let's talk about deck structure. Honestly, take a picture of this because this is pretty accurate. You want your deck to have generally 10 card draw effects, generally 10 rocks or ramp. Ramp is just getting mana from your deck, playing more lands a turn, searching your deck for a land and putting it on the field. Rocks are mana rocks. They're artifacts that tap for mana, right? So we want to be able to draw cards. We want to be able, because basically we need to be able to play things to win the game. Rocks and ramp are important because we want to be able to have the resources to play the things that we're drawing. You want 8 to 12 pieces of removal, really just to be able to interact with the board. Like, that's kind of important. Like, if your opponents are going nuts, we want to make sure that we're stopping it. And I also will say that there are some things that can be multifaceted too, right? Like, your creatures don't necessarily, like, you can have some creatures that will draw you cards, or you can have some mana rocks that will destroy something, say like the Might and Meek Stone, for example. You also want to have 35 to 38 lands on average, depending on your converted mana cost or your average mana value. If you're playing a deck, let's say Dragons is another great example of this. Dragons generally have a pretty high mana cost. So you want to probably have a bit more land to be able to keep up with these high-costed cards and make sure that we're playing them consistently, maybe at least 2 a turn. And then also 1 to 2 specific win cons, right? This is pretty general, but we can look at like combo pieces. We can look at cards that like make all of our boys bigger, saying like creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn or whatever. Like things like that, maybe even like, I don't know, but generally things like that, where it's not really specifically going to fall into these other categories, but they're still good to have. And some of the common mistakes that people do in deck building is, listen, there's like cutting too many lands or not having enough lands or ramp or really card draw, really. Just at the heart of Magic, you need lands to cast your spells. If you don't have enough of them, you're not going to be casting your spells. It's pretty self-explanatory. Also, not having interaction for your opponents is also going to lose you the game too. Like, if your opponents are just going crazy and just like attacking you every turn because they have a creature that's too big for you to stop, like, you're going to lose to that and you're not going to have a good time. So you want to make sure that like you can kind of slow your opponents down or stop them from doing what they're doing. Also, maybe avoid too many pet cards. For a lot of my veteran Magic players too, myself included, I fall prey to this. There are just so many cards you learn to love and you have a hard time cutting from your deck when you know that there are better options. It's hard, but you got to make that little cut. And then one of the other things is some decks will try to do everything when realistically it's better to just focus in on one thing. Like it's important to have a couple pieces that maybe can do a little bit of everything, but generally you're not going to be able to. Like you're not going to be able to like, exile graveyards frequently, like, and you're not going to be able to have your mana up to counter spells all the time, and you're not going to run all these cards that are going to stop combos, and you're not going to like, you know what I mean, right? You're not going to be able to do everything, so just kind of focusing more on one thing, and maybe having like one or two cards that try to like stop stuff, like reanimating graveyards or whatever. Try not to do everything. And most importantly, you want to do what makes sense for your playgroup. That is the biggest key I can recommend. If your playgroup, if everyone plays reanimation from their graveyard, you're probably going to want to put a lot of, let's say you're playing like blue-white humans, right? Or soldiers. You're probably not going to put a lot of land or grave hate in your deck. But if your opponents and your friends often run graveyard reanimation decks, it's probably a good idea to put them in there to stop your opponents and your friends from doing what they want to do. Like, playgroup is very, very important. And my tips for your first build, there's nothing wrong with getting a precon. You're going to upgrade it as you go. I know that there's sometimes some contention of people being like, oh, it's not really your deck. Well, not really that, but more or less just like, build it yourself. You'll learn so many new cards in the process of it at all. Like, I get the point of it, but generally, like, everything is going to be too overwhelming, and starting with a general structure of what you want to do and then building off of that is going to be a better learning strategy than just throwing you in the pool and hope you know how to swim. I'd also say you want to stick to a 2-color deck just while you learn more about the game, just so like you kind of get a little glance of like 2 different color pairs. You can kind of learn a little more threat detection, you can learn a little more politics as you go. There's a lot of stuff. And just general deck upgrades, it's going to be a little bit easier sticking to 1 or 2 colors rather than going nuts and building your first 5-color deck. I'd also say using cheaper staples is going to be more fun for you in the long run. Magic can be really expensive, and that is also like a pretty big turnoff for a lot of people for the hobby, is you'll see these lists online, and hey man, like I'm guilty of it too. Look at some of my deck techs I do. Like some of them are like $500, $600 and above. Like Magic can be really, really expensive. So I'd say using some of the cheaper staples like easy mana ramp or some cheaper mana rocks that are like less than $1, like just while you get a good feel for things, is going to be better for you in the long run rather than going, crazy. Also, testing and upgrading is important. One of the things that discourage people from playing Commander is you're like, this sucks and I don't know what to do. Or I try it out online and it works perfectly, but when I play it with my friends, it's terrible. You're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to test how your deck is doing without playing it a bunch. How many games, let's say for like, I'm guilty of this too, like not even guilty, but like for my veteran Magic players watching this, how many times have you guys played a game with a new card you added into the deck that like you just haven't been able to play because you simply haven't drawn it yet? Should you cut that card because it's underperforming, or have you just not played with it enough? Like some of the questions, right? Some of the questions you want to like think when you're testing and upgrading your deck after seeing how it plays. Like you're in a game or right after a game, start thinking, did I have enough mana to cast all the spells I wanted to? Was I ever running out of things to do? Like, was I just like passing my turn because I didn't have too much or nothing in my hand? Was I able to stop my opponents from like blazing over everyone else? Like, what did my commander do, right? These are a lot of important things to think of. Like, what did my commander do? Like, how can we get your commander more interactive in this game, and how can we adjust a deck so that your commander has a bigger impact? Were you able to stop your opponents? What's your removal looking like, right? Was I ever running out of things to do? That can be dependent on a lot of things. Did you have enough mana? And that can be fixed by simply adding more lands, adding more card draw, like stuff like that. Like trimming the fat is important, right? You're not going to be able to get it in your first go about, and it is a process. I have decks from like 2014, like when I first started playing, and I'm still tweaking those decks because I'm learning more and more every single game, and that's what's going to happen to you guys too. Is every game you play, you're just going to get a little bit better and a little bit better every single time. My final thoughts are, guys, your decks aren't going to be perfect. Mine never are. I make videos of my decks, and my decks aren't perfect. Look at my comments. I get people telling me all the time, hey man, you did a mechanic wrong, or hey, wouldn't this be a better ad? And they're right. I learn everything new all the time, right? So if your deck doesn't work out perfect, make some small adjustments, learn from other people, And just like everything, there's a learning curve, right? You're not going to get it perfect. It's going to be a while for it to even be quote unquote perfect. And with all the new cards coming out, your deck's never going to be finished anyway, because eventually you're going to say, hey, that brand new card is really, really good, and I want to try it in my deck, and I'm going to have to cut something else, right? Do it a lot. Eventually, it'll be a lot easier. And then I want to invite you guys, drop some comments of what you thought of this video with any questions you might have, or send me like your, like drop down your deck list links. I'll give you my thoughts on them, or just any questions you have or whatever. Drop them in the comment. I'll respond to all of them. But honestly, my throat's dry. That's all I got for you guys. If you want to buy any Magic cards from TCG Player, get them from my link down below. I don't know, it helps me and helps the channel out. And as always, like, subscribe, and comment what you think, and comment any questions down below. I will do my best to get back. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.